This is the Talkin Bout The Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Talking About the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. I'm joined by Kyle Staley. I'm Drew Rosenberg. Big show today. Indiana basketball wrapped up the Big Ten regular season yesterday and heads into the tournament. We know their seeding. We know their first-round matchup. Going to jump into all of that and more. Kyler, how are you doing today?
Doing good. I feel like it's been a minute since we did a podcast. Am I wrong here?
It's been we've done some wrap-ups and like post-game lives, but not a full podcast in a while.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be back talking about some Hoosiers again, and it's good to talk about some good stuff with Indiana. You know, Indiana winners of their last 5 of 7. I think that's what it is, and they're going dancing. You know, I think the win over Ohio State puts them in the NCAA tournament, and right now this Indiana team, arguably the hottest team, maybe like Michigan State aside or whatever, probably the hottest team right now in the Big Ten, playing some really, really good basketball. They're going to come as the number 9 seed. I know that's not really where people really wanted them to be at, you know, at the start of the season or whatnot, but they're there and they get a first round bye. They'll play Oregon, a team that they literally just played not too long ago. Yeah. So they got a chance, man. They got a chance to make a run or whatnot. But I think the big thing is that I think Indiana solidified themselves in the NCAA tournament with the win over Ohio State. And that's the most important thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll get into, you know, their side of the bracket because it's not, as we're recording this, the seedings aren't 100% official, but we know some things like Indiana is playing Oregon, then they would have the winner of that will get Michigan State. We'll jump into all that, but they are playing as well as they've played all year. And, you know, there's still some of the question marks. I'm going to go talk a little bit about the Oregon game last week. You know, it was the late game finishing. They take a 1-point lead with 1:30 left and then give up a 10-0 run to end the game. The stuff like that is still concerning. But then you go Ohio State, you want a close, tough game where you needed guys to make big shots. Penn State, you know, Penn State's not the best team, obviously, but, you know, another close win. You beat Michigan State on the road to kind of ignite this run. You beat Purdue, like, handedly. Like, not a close game, so you can't talk about their close game finishing. But they finished that game with about 10 minutes left. That's, you know, what good teams do. And Indiana's playing the best basketball we've seen from them in maybe 2 years.
I mean, I think the big thing is that the chains are off for this team, right? Yeah. You know, ever since Mike Woodson announced, or it was announced, obviously, that he's not coming back or whatever around that Michigan game or whatever, Indiana's 5-2 or something like that. Since that game. So Mike Woodson just playing the guys that like are going to help him win games and stuff. You know, Mike Woodson, he doesn't have any restrictions anymore. Like he doesn't have to, you know, cater to any players on this team, promise them playing time or whatnot. He's playing the guys that it actually means something for them and it's actually going to help them win basketball games. You know, think of the 3 Indiana kids. You think of Anthony Leal, Trey Galloway, Luke Goody. Those guys have been kind of the steady force for this team. You know, we talked about it multiple times and it's been said, you know, on multiple different podcasts and radio shows and all that stuff. But like this Indiana team probably, you know, no one would have blamed them if they just would have like, you know what, let's just fold up here. We don't have anything to play for. Our coach isn't coming back. Let's give up. But no, man, that they've rallied around Mike Woodson and that they are playing really, really tough basketball. And they found a sense of urgency and toughness. Yeah, it hasn't been pretty at times, you know, but they're finding ways to win big time games. And they put themselves in a position to make the NCAA tournament when all hope looked lost for that, you know, a month ago. So they're just playing tough basketball and they're playing for something. They're playing for the front of the jersey. And you look at how Mike Woodson's done with the rotations. I think he's done an excellent job with the rotations the past few weeks or so, at least these last 7 games, playing the bigs together when he needs to play them together, not playing them together or whatnot. So, and that's really just opened up the floor with Indiana. So this Indiana team, they're red hot, like I said earlier in the podcast, but they're just playing good basketball right now. The best basketball I think that we've seen all season from them.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Indiana trio, you know, Leal, Goody, and Galloway. I mean, I'm going to start with Leal. Leal gets so much credit despite, you know, he doesn't put up the, you know, craziest stat. He doesn't put up any stats really for the most part, you know. He could have a game of 0.0. It doesn't, but he could, and he'd be the best player on the court just because of how good he is defensively, how much of a leader he is. And he gets a lot of praise. I still don't think he gets enough praise for what he brings to this team just as a leader. Trey Galloway is not the most outspoken guy. Leal is the, vocal leader. He's the heart and soul of this team. When you watch them play, you just look at Ohio State yesterday. I think that, or at least for me watching, the changing point in that game, Leal full court pressing, draws a foul. It's called a flagrant. And, he gets elbowed in the face. Most guys are, maybe going to stay down, try to sell the call, get the flagrant. Leal pops right back up, runs right over to the student section, and is fired up, yelling and getting the crowd at Assembly Hall pumped. And from there, Indiana goes on a huge run, takes control of the game against Ohio State, and pulls out the win.
Nobody on this team bleeds more Indiana than what Anthony Leal does. That dude loves Indiana. That dude, I just don't think you can think of a better teammate in the world, in the country right now than Anthony Leal, because that dude for 5 years, a lot of times didn't see the floor. He rode the bench. He was the last person on the bench and was always ready when his name was called throughout the years. And especially when Mike Woodson came in, there's some talented guys that Woodson brought in that are more talented than Anthony Leal as a player and whatnot, but obviously didn't have, I guess you could say, enough heart or soul, to be able to help Indiana when they needed to. But, they turned to Anthony Leal in some crucial times. And this year, especially, they moved Anthony Leal into the starting lineup. That's been a difference maker. And honestly, Anthony Leal may have, found himself and worked himself into making the first team all Big Ten defense to how good he's been. He's guarding the best players on the opposing team every single game. And he's bringing in energy, and he's doing the little things that Indiana really needed to win these types of games. And he's doing it. And you mentioned it. He's a vocal leader and stuff. And he's been the guy that's been kind of, steadying the storm, whatever. He put on his boxing gloves and he's like, I'm going out there and fighting or whatever and stuff. And he got everybody together, and he's just been a true leader ever since this whole thing kind of collapsed at the middle of the point of the season. So Indiana wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for Anthony Leal. And, credit to Mike Woodson for finally giving him a chance to go out there and do his thing. Not going to be a guy that's going to score a ton of points. He might not be a guy that's going to score any points, but he's going to bring it on the defensive end. He's going to get the group together, and that's the main reason why Indiana's, been winning these games as of late.
Yeah, Leal sets the tone for this team. You just look at the game yesterday against Ohio State. Indiana, I think there was down, I want to say 8 or 9, maybe, I think it might have been 10 points, like 10, 12 minutes left in the second half. A point in this game where you could have easily collapsed. Ohio State goes on a little run, game's over. Trey Galloway has 4 fouls. He was Indiana's best player yesterday. We're going to talk about him probably just a second. But Leal kind of set the tone on the defensive end, and Indiana, without Trey Galloway, goes on a run and, stays in the game for when Trey comes back. They're able to take control of it. And it's just the leadership of Leal. The stats don't count all the million little things he does, all the little conversations he's having with guys on the bench in the huddle in between plays. What Leal brings to this team, there's just no stat that really defines it. And you just see the way he interacts with these guys. These guys, he fights. He's a fighter. This team could have easily quit. And Leal, Galloway, Goody, they just weren't going to let that happen a month ago when the season looked like it was over. And then the Trey Galloway. Trey Galloway has been, I'd argue, the best player on Indiana, maybe not all season, but at this point in the year, Trey Galloway is Indiana's most important player. When he came to Indiana, he was not a point guard. He's only really played point guard because of injuries. He had no choice over the last, 2 years, kind of got thrust into that role. And now he's probably the guy in Indiana you trust most, the ball in his hands, bringing up the court. He's gotten so much better as a playmaker over his college career. Hit 1,000 points yesterday. There's not enough you can say about Galloway. I know he's not the best 3-point shooter, streaky at times, hit a big one yesterday, but just his ability to constantly make the right pass, his floater is so deadly. And the fact his floater, it kind of reminds me of Trae Young. I don't know if I've said this before, but the way Trae Young gets to the rim, when he throws the floater, you don't know if it's a floater or an alley-oop. It's the same thing with Trey Galloway. His floater looks exactly like his alley-oop pass. So him and Balo on those pick and rolls, it's so deadly because if you play drop against Galloway, which most teams do because they want Galloway to shoot, Galloway's going to put his defender in jail and make the big either commit to the floater or commit to the roll. And it's so tough to guard, and it's been Indiana's best offense for probably the last month.
Yeah, no, I think Trey Galloway's been, Anthony Leal can be the heart and soul of this team. I think Trey Galloway's been the motor, for this team, man. Obviously, Miles Rice, you looked at him, you were kind of hoping he was going to be the main ball handler at times. And He's just been very, very inconsistent and whatnot. It struggled at times, had some high points at times this season. But Trey Galloway, there's been some struggles, throughout the middle part of the season or whatever. But I think for the most part, Trey Galloway's been the most consistent player for Indiana for a lot of times. And, he just – you were happy for him yesterday, right? Because obviously he's been through so much. He came into Indiana still trying to find himself as a player, was there for Archie Miller's last year. A player for a long time, just a player without a position, right? And, when Mike Woodson took over, they would, put him in certain situations and stuff, just like whatever spot they needed. Hey, let's throw Trey in there or whatnot. Mike Woodson always jokes about calling him crazy man and stuff because you throw him out on the floor, you just didn't know what you were going to get out of Trey. But you always knew that it was going to be high effort regardless. And, throughout the years, Trey Galloway's become more of a basketball player, I would say. Yeah. And he's really, redefined his skill set. And he's becoming a guy that's a really good ball handler, a guy that can knock down shots, still defend, and still play with a high motor. Throughout all the injuries that he had, man, because, obviously there was a lot of times where he was injured, rehab, just a lot of things that he's went through. So going back to yesterday, him hitting those couple of those big threes, especially that three, that kind of dagger three deep in late into that miscalculation when it came to the shot clock. Which
that was ridiculous.
Strange, by the way, and the Indiana staff and Mike Woodson even jokingly is just like, I guess that's a rule. Like we never really noticed or anything like that, and it was just kind of weird. So, but Trey Galloway hitting that big shot. Really, really special moment for him. And that's going to be a shot that's going to be replayed over and over again, throughout the years. And I think Trey Galloway's earned that. Last year he didn't get a play on his first senior night, didn't get a play because he blew out his quad, I think, in warm-ups. So he got to have this moment. It was a little, sketchy when he picked up his fourth foul and had to sit for a while, but Anthony Leal came in and stepped up, and Malik Reneau, those guys, made some big plays, down the stretch. So Trey Galloway, man, Indiana, it's a team effort, obviously, for Indiana, to be where they're at right now. And a lot of that has to do with Trey Galloway and the trust that Mike Woodson has in Trey for him to go out there and lead this team. Him and Anthony, Luke Goody being a leader. And then obviously, Malik playing some really, really good basketball as well. So it's a team effort, but Trey Galloway, man, he is the motor that keeps this Indiana team running and, could eventually lead them to a really nice postseason run.
Yeah, I mean, this team it feels kind of almost dangerous. I'm going to ask you this right now, just straight up, Kyle. Do you think it's a lock Indiana's in the tournament? Because I'm kind of on the other side of, I think if they lose to Oregon, I think they still get in, but I don't think it's a lock. I think it's very up in the air, depending, you need some help.
So I do think you got to look at this bubble, right? I'll say right now, I think Indiana's in the NCAA tournament. Lock, I'm pretty confident no matter what happens at this point. You got to look at what the resume. Yeah, they're 4-11 quad one wins. Not great by any stretch of the means. They're squeaky clean when it comes to quad two, quad three, quad four. They took care of business. So they have that resume. When the NCAA committee's looking at that, they ask Indiana, why should Indiana be in here? Well, Indiana's we took care of business. We took care of business against the teams that we were supposed to take care of business of. And, we didn't win a whole lot of, quad one wins or games or whatever, but we still have a good chunk of it. And they still have another quad one opportunity with Oregon this Thursday. Yeah. So I think right now it's just a matter of fact, is Indiana going to be in a playing game? Is Indiana, going to be like a 11 seed or something like that? I just don't know where Indiana stands right now. And honestly, Indiana, and just full transparency here, the bubble this year has been extremely weak.
Yeah.
That's really, really helped Indiana in a lot of ways. But when you look at a lot of these, resumes, North Carolina, Arkansas, Texas, Ohio State, those kind of teams, whatever, Indiana's got a much better resume than any of those teams. So it would just be idiotic not to think that Indiana's not in the NCAA tournament right now. I think with the win versus Ohio State yesterday, solidified that. That was definitely a win and end type of game for both teams. And Indiana just, down the stretch made the right plays and got the win. So I think Indiana's in no matter what. A win versus Oregon would probably go a really, really way to just when it comes to seeding or whatever and stuff. But I do think Indiana can beat Oregon. I really do. I think last week they played well enough on the road to beat them, but a lot of different factors come into play The foul count was really bad. I don't want to really blame the refs, but if everyone knows that Oregon's a physical team or whatnot and stuff, it doesn't mean that they can just get away with being overly physical. That's just my opinion. And obviously that Oregon guard, what's is it, Shellstead? Is that
Jackson Shellstead.
Him hitting that incredible shot, the same type of shot that Trey Galloway hit yesterday. Obviously just a backbreaker, but I think Indiana can beat Oregon. I really do. And they can go on a run. We'll just see what happens there.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this. Jackson Shellstead was actually my preseason sleeper for Big Ten Player of the Year.
Oh wow! Look at you being all smart. How's that coming right now?
Not good. I mean, I don't know if you saw the beginning of the year. He couldn't hit water if he fell off the boat. He was shooting like under 30% for the first 2 months of the year. He's found it now where he's been awesome. But But
who is the Big Ten Player of the Year? Who do we think that is?
I think it's tough. Because Michigan State's the best team, but they don't really have like a clear.
They're pretty balanced.
Yeah, maybe Tanjay.
Maybe. I mean, Braden Smith, obviously.
Braden Smith
still in there. He's playing.
I was thinking Braden Smith or Tanjay.
I'd probably go Braden Smith as a slight Danny, maybe, but I mean, Michigan's really like we talked about it off air or whatever. Danny Wolf kind of forgets that he's really good at basketball a lot of the time. So, I like Braden Smith a little bit. I know we're a little off topic, but I like Braden Smith slightly because I think I think a lot of people counted out this Purdue team quite a bit. Zach Edey not being there, but he stepped up in a lot of ways, and he's really carried Purdue in a lot of ways this season. So I think you got to give him the slight nod, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think Braden Smith, I mean, if he gets it, I would not be surprised. I think it'll probably come down to him, Tanjay, and Danny Wolf are probably the three I think it'll come from that group potentially. But, we'll see. But back to the Big Ten tournament. We talked about it, Oregon. Indiana, lost a close one. In a game they really could have won. I have a story coming out about it. So a little tease to this about keys to a deep run. Making their layups. I think Indiana, let me see if I can find the stat real quick. But I think Indiana was 8 of 18 on layups against Oregon.
Oof.
They're 5 of 16 against Ohio State. But 8 of 18, making layups, it's it sounds so simple. It really does. But you just they want to get to the paint. You got to finish those chances. You look at the wins against Purdue, Penn State, they made most of their layup chances, and it's the easy ones. You have to make the easy ones because let's call it how it is. This Indiana offense has not been the prettiest. They've not been the best at creating great looks. So when you get around the paint, you got to convert those looks, and that's going to be key to them beating Oregon.
Especially when you've got one of the best front courts in the Big Ten and Omar Bello and Malik Reneau. It's easy things, right? And they have missed a lot of bunnies at times, and but at the same time they've also made some spectacular plays and whatnot. But I do agree with you. The layups, we just saw. I don't know if anybody that's listening, we just saw with the women's team the other day versus USC in their Big Ten tournament. I think they went 7 to 27 or something like that in layups or whatever, and they still were very, very close with USC, throughout the game. So, but yeah, layups are going to be big, and it's just going to be consistent, with the big guys. And you want to see Mackenzie Mbako. Hopefully, he can be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to driving and trying to make plays around the rim. I think as of late, he's been pretty aggressive. I think he's made some effort plays. There was one yesterday where there was 3 Ohio State players, and he was the only player that was going out for the box out, and he made a spectacular rebound and whatever and stuff. Those types of things, really help take Indiana to a new level, and hopefully you see that more of Mackenzie Mbako. I think the guards for Indiana have done pretty good job of attacking and, getting to the lane, and the bigs have really done a good job of clearing space out and whatnot. But yeah, layups, you got to make the easy ones. You got to make the free throws. You got to make the easy ones. So, but yeah, that's kind of what my line of thinking is.
Yeah, and you look at that game, I'd be very surprised if Malik Reneau goes 4 for 12 again. Mackenzie Mbako is 2 for 10. There was a lot of places there was a lot of, a lot of stuff you left out there. You're like, okay, Indiana did not play their best game, and they were, up 1 with a minute and a half left. Yeah, you got to close that game out, and that's been a huge issue all year, late game play. And if Indiana can do that, I mean, this team can go on a run. They play Oregon. If you beat Oregon, you get Michigan State. Indiana's the only team to beat Michigan State at Breslin all year. that zone defense really flustered Michigan State. See how they respond, because I'm sure if Indiana gets that matchup, they will go heavy zone again. But I want to talk about Malik Reneau for a second. Malik Reneau off the bench has kind of been really a game changer, because it's allowed him to kind of play more free and more attacking in a way, where he's like, before it was, in the starting lineup, you have so many talented guys around him where it's like, where can you pick your spots versus Reneau? But now Reneau off the bench, when he's with that bench lineup, you can kind of force him the ball, let him make plays. And he's so talented. He's going to get points around the rim. He's going to draw fouls. And then when the double team comes, he a lot of times will make the right pass and it'll lead to good looks. And it's really helped change how this bench unit has worked since he's kind of gone to the bench.
I mean, think of where Indiana would be if they would have done that a lot sooner in the season, right? But again, this goes back to, Mike Woodson, playing, taking the chains off of what he was doing as a coach, because obviously at the beginning of the season, there's a lot of things, and I think a lot of people kind of forget this with coaching and everything. Like, you're trying to please a lot of people, right? Yeah. Especially this day and age. Like, we'll use Bryson Tucker as an example, and this is no knock on Bryson or whatever and stuff, but Mike Woodson was obviously getting him minutes and stuff. Mike Woodson had the thought process is, I got to get this guy minutes. I got to get him confidence. I got to get him something so that I can, potentially have him back next year and be one of my key guys. Michael Woodson's not going to be back next year, so he's going to play the right guys, the guys that are going to help him win games. Bryson Tucker, unfortunately, was just not helping Indiana winning games. And again, no knock on Bryson Tucker, because he showed a lot of promise a lot of times this season and a lot of potential. And I think he's going to be a spectacular college basketball player, maybe even a pro basketball player as well. So, but, back to Malik Reneau, it allows him to, sit back and kind of see what's going on, try to see what's going on in the game setting. And he comes off the bench and he provides a lot of a spark, and he's still really, really consistent. The production level has not dropped off at any point in time, and it's helped not only him, it's helped out Umar Ballo a lot too, for him to allow him to do a lot of work. The spacing is a lot better now. Of course, Indiana's got to make their outside shots a little bit more consistent, but yeah, Malik Reneau, I mean, just the production level that he's had, and the continued rise that he's had ever since for his freshman year. Last year he took a big jump. I think this year he's taken a big jump, especially as a teammate, because Malik Reneau could have definitely been a player where folded it in. If I'm not starting, why should I play for this? But he's a big Mike Woodson guy, and it just shows you, this team listens to Mike Woodson, and this team respects Mike Woodson. So Malik Reneau, man, he's an X factor, I guess you could say. He's an X factor for this team, to make a deep run, come these next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, this is a chance. Indiana, a month ago, 2 months ago, I said it. I'll put my hand up. I said I didn't see any world where they turn it around and they find themselves in a position to make the tournament. And they're here. They're on the doorstep. If they lose to Oregon, there's still a good chance to get in. You just got to kind of avoid those, bid stealers and hope some other bubble teams don't go on big runs. Like if Ohio State goes on a run in the Big Ten tournament, that could be a problem for Indiana if they lose to Oregon. But Indiana is right here on the doorstep, and you beat Oregon, you're in for sure, I think. And if you beat Oregon, I don't think you're just in for sure. I think you're probably avoid that play-in as well. So it's kind of like this. I mean, in college basketball too, you just even going back to last week's loss to Oregon, that was another, like, you win, you're probably off the bubble. College basketball, you don't get second chances. It doesn't happen. Indiana has a second chance to kind of make up for what happened on Tuesday, that late game collapse. And I'm really excited to see how they come out, because, it's not a home game. It's a Big Ten tournament, but it is, it's close. It's close for them. It's home. And it's going to be I'm really excited to see what kind of energy they come out with, what kind of fire they come out with, because, this team has nothing to lose. A lot of seniors, a lot of guys playing basketball. Anthony Leal is probably playing basketball for the last time in his, competitive. I don't think he's going to play pro. I could be very wrong. I mean, he ended his senior day speech talking about if you need a house, he's the guy to call. But so these guys are playing for more. They're playing for pride. They're playing for themselves. They're playing for Indiana. They're playing for Mike Woodson. These guys love Mike Woodson. I feel like every time we talk about Mike Woodson, there's a comment under the page. You guys don't know anything. Woodson's the worst. All that. Clearly these guys love Woodson, and they are playing for him, and this team is dangerous because of that. They're playing for more than just, themselves, which is which is kind of scary. It's a scary matchup to be in because, you looked at Indiana a month ago and you're like, oh, that's a pretty bad team. And now it's like, okay, this team could potentially make some noise.
Yeah, and I'm pretty confident in saying, you look back at last week, that Oregon game, like I think Indiana played well enough on the road to be able to win that game. And Shell hit that really, really clutch shot. Yeah, that's just a tough shot. And, Anthony Leal was on him and barely gave him any room. It was just a tough shot. It is what it is. I do think Indiana can beat Oregon. I really do. I think this is the game of the NCAA tournament, and it starts off at noon on Thursday. So the energy level, I think, is going to be high. I do think there's going to be a lot of Indiana fans, especially now that this Indiana team is playing really, really well and playing good basketball. There's going to be a lot of support in the house. And, Mike Woodson, when he took over the Indiana job, he talked about, I want to win championships. I want to win the Big Ten tournament. I want to go to the Final Four and stuff like that. He hasn't gotten really that close to doing any of those in his 4 years. You can't really positively say he's going to do it this year or not. It is March. Crazy things happen. So you can't completely shut the door on that. But I do think Indiana can go on a run here. I really do. I think if they beat Oregon, you already know what the formula, I guess, is to beat Michigan State. It's still going to be tough or whatever. But this Indiana team is playing with a lot of fire right now. And they're playing, like you said, playing for more than just themselves. And they want to go on a run, and they want to send Woodson out on a high note. They want to send these seniors out on a high note. They want to leave a lasting mark, I think. So, and it starts on Thursday. It starts with Oregon. It's going to be a tough matchup, but I think that it's going to be very pro Indiana there.
Yeah.
I don't know how well Oregon's going to travel from all the way out there, but I think Indiana is going to have a lot of support in the building. And I think it's just going to be a really, really competitive game. And, who knows what could happen. This Indiana team could get beat. This Indiana team can go on a run. You just don't really know yet, but we'll just have to see, right? That's why we play these games, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's one of those things. That's why the college basketball is so much fun. Anything can happen. March Madness is one of the crazier sports because of that. And Indiana really can make a run. No one would have gave them a chance to beat Michigan State a few weeks ago. And they came in and beat Michigan State at Breslin, which I mentioned earlier. No one's done that all year other than Indiana. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it should be an exciting atmosphere, and we're gonna have all the coverage on HoosierIllustrated.com. But before we wrap up, we're gonna do picks. And one quick note before we do picks, I know a ton of you are like, oh, when are they going to talk about the coaching search? When are they going to talk about the job? I know the Jeff Goodman report came out today. We're going to have a podcast for that as soon as the season ends. We're going to have a full podcast for that. We're going to have a bunch of stuff about like our predictions for coaches. Who could it be? We'll have all that covered. It's just right now we're focused on the season. Mike, the season's not over yet, as we know. But Kyler, let's jump in. I want to ask you, Indiana, Oregon, you think the Hoosiers do it? And then I want to know who you have winning the Big Ten tournament.
I do think Indiana beats Oregon. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be very physical like it was the first game. I also think that the foul count is going to be a lot more balanced than what it was for that. So I think Indiana wins. As far as an overall winner, this one's tough because I feel like there's a lot of top-heavy teams here and stuff. So I don't know. Throw a dart on the wall. I'm going to go with Wisconsin. That sounds like a trendy pick there. I'm going to go with Wisconsin. And I don't know who they'll play in the Thursday game or whatever. That part of the bracket hasn't been solidified yet. But if they win, they'll play UCLA. And then they are on the same side of the bracket with Indiana, Michigan, and Michigan State and Oregon and stuff. But I like Wisconsin. I'm going to go with them.
Okay. I keep going back and forth. I really do. I keep going like Wisconsin's a team I do think could make a run. Illinois is, playing a lot better right now. I would not be surprised to see them, make a run. I'm gonna go UCLA though. I just don't know what it is. I think they've it took them a little bit to adjust to the Big Ten, as we kind of saw with them throughout the season. Like UCLA did not have really the best start to the Big Ten season. I mean, they struggled early and they turned it around. I think they're gonna finish fifth. I think it's confirmed they're fifth, or no, they're four. They're four, so they get the double. Yeah, so likely to get Wisconsin. I just think UCLA, I like Mick Cronin a lot. I think they could make a little run and, surprise some people.
Wisconsin and UCLA is such a fun matchup.
Yeah.
If that happens, that's so fun to see on a Friday in the Big Ten tournament. Listen, everyone loves the NCAA tournament. I love the NCAA tournament the first week, but I am a junkie when it comes to the tournaments. I think that's a phenomenal appetizer for the big dance or whatever and stuff. So there's going to be a lot of fun matchups. I'm excited to see what, hopefully it's not really a bubble team or whatever, but I'm excited to see like maybe a Minnesota goes on a run or something like that. So it's going to be fun, but yeah, we're going to have everything covered and whatnot. We'll have some boots on the ground in Indy. So hopefully Indiana can make a nice little run and see what they can do as far as, kind of building on their NCAA tournament seeding.
Yeah. I mean, Maryland is, dangerous too. We didn't really talk about them, and I just have to bring them up. I mean, I brought them up a little bit. Illinois, that team is right now. I was between UCLA and Illinois, and I really could see Illinois winning it. Illinois is hot. I mean, they got blown out by Duke, beaten off the court. Then they go out, beat Iowa, blow out Michigan on the road, and then they beat Purdue. Like, Illinois is as hot as any team in the Big Ten right now.
This whole season, man, I just feel like they've been very, very up and down. So
yeah.
I have a hard time trusting them. That's why I don't want to pick them right now, because I just don't know what Illinois team you're going to get. So
I'm not picking. Yeah, this one the Big Ten.
They could be a team that wins the Big Ten tournament. They could also be a team that goes on a Final Four run, or they could get beat in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. So I don't know. I don't trust them as a team. They got a lot of talent. They got a lot of talent. I just do not trust them right now. But you mentioned Maryland. That's another team that I didn't even really think about. Like, they could seriously make a run as well. So it's going to be fun. I think this is the most excited I've been for a Big Ten tournament in a long time.
Yeah, because I feel like last year you kind of, there was a couple teams you knew, like one of these two is going to probably win it. This year, I mean, you could tell me it's probably 8 teams win the Big Ten tournament. I'd be like, yeah, I can totally see it.
Make it 9. Make it 9.
9, yeah. Indiana, let's throw, yeah.
I mean, the last time they had the Big Ten tournament in Indianapolis, Indiana went on a run. So let's think that was Woodson's first year. So let's think about that. We'll just see. Let's see if they had the magic there. And how cool would it be? The last thing I'll say, how cool would it be if Indiana did win the Big Ten tournament, something that Bob Knight could never even do. Yeah. So that would be pretty special. But it's going to be a path. Indiana's got a tough path, arguably the toughest path out of any team, and Oregon as well, obviously. So it's fun. I'm excited, Drew. I am so excited for this next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, for all things Indiana athletics, and we got football spring practice has started. Some stories about Mendoza, Justice Ellison joining the staff. We're going to have all of this college basketball, like the Big Ten tournament. We're going to have you covered for all of that on the HoosierIllustrated.com site and Indiana_FRN on Twitter and Facebook. Also, Hoosier Illustrated on YouTube. Make sure you're checking that out, because all the press conferences, post-game stuff, post-game wrap-ups, all of that stuff, we have you covered. This podcast included In Touch with Indiana Sports with John Alden. All of that is on the HoosierIllustrated.com website and YouTube, so make sure you're checking that out. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Talking About the Hoosiers podcast. We'll be back.